When you think about a French Bulldog, an image probably pops into your head almost immediately. You're picturing those big, iconic bat ears, the smushed face, and, well, basically a dog that functions as a living, breathing throw pillow.
Oh, yeah, the ultimate couch breed. Just snoring away on a velvet cushion.
Right. Completely unbothered by the concept of physical exertion.
Yeah,
I mean, they probably look at you like you're crazy if you even pick up a leash.
definitely. They really have that reputation.
And if you have one of these incredibly popular dogs in your life, or, you've ever considered getting one, you've almost certainly been told that this is exactly how they're meant to live. Well, welcome to today's deep dive.
We have a lot of ground to cover today.
We really do. We were looking at a fascinating stack of veterinary notes, anatomical breakdowns, and clinical observations focused entirely on the health and daily reality of the French Bulldog. And our mission today is actually to shatter that exact myth, the myth of the living throw pillow.
Which is so crucial because people really cling to that idea.
Yes, precisely. Because the medical consensus we're exploring today makes a very compelling case that believing this myth is actually one of the most dangerous things you can do to this breed, and it's going to fundamentally change how you view canine exercise altogether.
Okay, let's unpack this because to a lot of people, calling a Frenchie a high exercise dog sounds completely ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous to most people, and it's important to acknowledge exactly why that belief is so widespread. I mean, it isn't just fabricated out of thin air.
Right, there's some truth to it at the base level.
Exactly. The breed absolutely does have real, profound limitations around endurance. That is a biological fact, hardwired into their anatomy. What's fascinating here is how the clinical data pinpoints exactly where we go wrong as owners.
Where we make the leap.
Right. We take the fact of limited endurance and we completely conflate it with does it need exercise. We merge them into one idea.
Oh, I see. So it's a massive logic trap. It is. And the veterinary insights are very clear that making that specific leap, conflating those two completely different concepts, is one of the most consequential, potentially life-shortening mistakes an owner can make.
Because, I mean, if you assume a dog doesn't need to move, you just don't move them. You let them sleep.
Exactly.
But to really understand why skipping exercise is so uniquely dangerous for this specific breed, we first have to look at the architecture of the Frenchie's body. And calling it compromised architecture might be putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's an understatement. For French Bulldogs, we have to stop thinking about exercise, body weight, and breathing as three separate topics. Because they aren't.
They're connected.
They are one continuous, highly sensitive, interconnected loop. Let's start with the airway, because honestly, that dictates everything else. A French Bulldog is a brachycephalic breed, which is just the medical term for short muzzle.
Right, the smushed face.
Yeah. And their airway already has significantly less working margin than a dog with a standard snout, like, say, a golden retriever. The bones of their skull have been shortened by generations of selective breeding, but the soft tissues inside the tongue, the soft palate, haven't shrunk at the same rate.
So you just have a lot of tissue crammed into a very small space.
Yes. So they are operating on a breathing deficit from day one.
I was actually reading through the anatomical descriptions before we started, and the best way I can picture this physical flaw is imagine trying to breathe exclusively through a cocktail straw.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
Yeah, like not a regular fast food straw, but one of those tiny, rigid little red cocktail straws. And you're trying to do this while wearing a heavy, tight backpack strapped across your chest.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the restriction. And I actually want to build on that cocktail straw analogy for a second.
Go for it.
Imagine trying to pull air through that tiny straw, but the straw is made of warm, flexible plastic that starts collapsing inward the harder you pull. Oh, wow. That sounds awful.
It is. That's what happens with their elongated, soft palate when they try to breathe heavily. Now, factor in weight gain.
Right, because extra pounds change the whole dynamic.
Exactly. If a standard retriever gains a few extra pounds, the primary concern from a vet standpoint is going to be joint health or, maybe some long-term cardiovascular strain down the road. But in a Frenchie, excess body weight means extra fatty tissue accumulating directly around the neck, the chest, and the abdomen.
So it's not just a little extra padding on the ribs.
Not at all. Because their breathing mechanics are already operating through that collapsing cocktail straw, that extra fat physically crushes their compromised airway from the outside in.
Really?
Yeah. The physical weight of the fat is literally pushing down on their trachea and restricting the expansion of their chest wall, severely limiting their ability to pull in oxygen.
Wait, so keeping them lean isn't just about general fitness or like looking good at the dog park. It's literally about keeping their airway physically open. Yes, absolutely. That is the critical distinction that changes everything. Maintaining a lean body condition in a French Bulldog is an active, non-negotiable measure to protect a respiratory system that is already working overtime.
Just to maintain baseline oxygenation while they are sitting completely still.
Right. Extra weight isn't a neutral aesthetic issue for them. It is an active, constant obstruction to their survival.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox for you. If you own one of these dogs or are caring for one, if extra weight ruins their breathing, they must exercise to stay lean.
But how do you exercise a dog whose breathing is already fundamentally compromised?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I have a hard time breathing, the last thing I want to do is go for a jog.
You have to completely redefine what the word exercise means. The fundamental shift required here is moving away from the concepts of intensity and distance and focusing entirely on frequency and duration.
Because the brachycephalic airway and their severely limited cooling system simply cannot support hour-long hikes.
Or extended runs, or really vigorous continuous play. Pushing them for distance is a guaranteed recipe for a medical crisis. Instead, the ideal routine is 2 or 3 brief, highly engaged walks spread out strategically across the entire day.
Okay, I have to push back here, because this is where a lot of traditional dog advice clashes with this. If we never push them for distance and we keep everything short and brief, how does their heart stay healthy?
That's a really common concern.
Yeah, like don't they need sustained cardio just like we do to build a strong cardiovascular system?
That is exactly the question most active owners ask, and it's a great one. The difference comes down to the bottleneck in their biology. In you, or say in a greyhound, your lungs can pull in plenty of oxygen to feed your heart and muscles as you push your cardiovascular limits.
But in a Frenchie, the respiratory system will fail long before the heart gets a proper workout.
Exactly. Their heart is often willing and able. But if the lungs can't deliver the oxygen through that tiny restricted airway, the heart is basically just pumping deoxygenated blood. So pushing them doesn't build cardio strength.
It just pushes them into oxygen debt and heat stroke.
Right. You have to completely abandon the idea of canine cardio for this breed.
Wow, okay, so the lungs are the absolute ceiling on their physical capability. So we're talking about grazing on exercise rather than having one big meal of it.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
But how does that apply as the dog ages? Because obviously, a 6-month-old puppy and a 10-year-old senior dog have completely different physical realities.
Well, the underlying principle of short and frequent holds true across their entire lifespan, but it definitely shifts in application. Puppies, for example, need brief bursts of movement.
Because their joints are still developing, right?
Yes, and their overall stamina is genuinely low. So short, playful bursts of a few minutes at a time are perfect. Adult dogs, assuming they are kept in that crucial lean condition we talked about, can manage more consistent daily activity.
Like a 15 or 20-minute walk a few times a day.
Exactly. But again, even a peak condition adult Frenchie does not benefit from marathon-style exertion.
So no 10K training buddies here.
Definitely not. And then for seniors, you need a further reduction in intensity and distance, but you absolutely must maintain the frequency.
So a slower pace, a much shorter route, maybe just to the end of the block and back.
Right. They still require that regular, gentle movement. It supports their aging joints and maintains their body condition without demanding more than an older, less elastic respiratory system can give.
All right, I want to bring up an observation that I know you've probably seen in real life or on social media, because it happens all the time.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
You see Frenchies on walks, and suddenly they just drop. They sit down on the sidewalk, they sploot out, they refuse to move, and everyone laughs and calls it stubbornness. I mean, there are a million viral videos of owners trying to drag their sitting Frenchie down the street.
Yes, and it's so frustrating to see.
Are we babying them by letting them stop? Like, should an owner just enforce some discipline, pull them along, and push through it to get that fitness in?
We are absolutely misreading that behavior, and it's honestly one of the most dangerous viral jokes on the internet. When a Frenchie is panting heavily, laboring to breathe, or outright stopping and sitting down mid-walk, that is not an attitude problem.
It's just not stubbornness at all.
No, that is their body signaling a hard, non-negotiable biological limit.
What's actually happening in their body when they do that?
Well, When they sit or lie down, they are often trying to straighten their neck and align their spine to open up their airway as much as physically possible. They are desperately trying to recover from oxygen debt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, encouraging a French Bulldog to push through that wall by dragging them on a leash is incredibly dangerous. Recognizing that specific signal, honoring it without hesitation, and stopping the activity is one of the most crucial skills an owner must develop.
So the dog isn't being a diva. The dog is literally out of oxygen. That completely changes how you look at a walk.
It really does.
But it also means that if long, grueling walks are totally out of the question, owners need other ways to keep these dogs healthy. Which leads us to a really fascinating point in the clinical data. Physical exertion isn't the only way to build a strong, tired dog.
Right. And here we hit a massive oversight in how people view canine fitness.
Yeah.
People tend to think exercise is only about burning calories to keep the weight off.
Which is important, obviously.
Yes. But exercise is equally about maintaining muscle tone. And for a compact, incredibly dense-bodied breed like the French Bulldog, muscular support for their joints and their posture is absolutely vital.
You know, when I look at their anatomy, honestly, a Frenchie's build reminds me of a heavy, compact sports car.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah, like if you have a really heavy chassis, a dense block of a body, you need a seriously strong, stiff suspension system to keep it from bottoming out, right? The muscle tone is their suspension system.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. Let's take your sports car analogy a step further. A Frenchie has very dense, heavy bones, but they are prone to spinal issues and joint luxation.
Which is where the joints pop out of place, right?
Exactly. That muscular suspension system is the only thing holding that heavy chassis together. It matters even more for them than it might for a lighter, more naturally athletic breed with long, spindly legs.
But since you can't build that muscle with 5-mile runs, you have to find low.
Exactly. When a dog is actively sniffing, trying to solve a puzzle to find food, or tracking a scent hidden in the living room, they're engaging a massive amount of neural processing power. The brain burns glucose to function.
So intense mental concentration literally drains their energy reserves.
Yes, just as effectively as running, but without requiring their airway to work overtime.
Brain drains instead of body drains.
I love that phrasing. 10 minutes of intense, focused scent work can tire a Frenchie out as much as a mile-long walk. These activities provide incredibly meaningful stimulation without demanding an intense physical output from their lungs.
And this directly busts another massive myth, right? The idea that the short walk is enough.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if you just take them out for 10 minutes to pee and then they sleep the rest of the day, people think, well, they can't run, so I guess we're done here. They're good.
And that leaves this incredibly intelligent, highly people-oriented breed severely underengaged and frustrated. A single short walk a day is not enough. The true goal is total daily engagement.
So it's the combination of the physical walks to maintain the suspension system and the mental enrichment spread throughout the day to satisfy their brain.
Exactly. That total package is what creates a balanced, satisfied dog rather than a bored, destructive one.
But whether it's a short walk, a puzzle toy, or a scent game, any activity you do with your dog usually involves some level of play. And play brings out what might be the single most dangerous blind spot in a French Bulldog's entire psychology.
Oh, without a doubt. It's the trap of eagerness. And this is the final major myth we really need to tackle today. It's the deeply ingrained, completely human assumption that a dog's willingness to play means it is physically capable of continuing to play.
Right, we just assume they'll stop when they're tired.
But in Frenchies, their enthusiasm to engage with their owner, to chase the ball, to play tug, will frequently, almost systematically, outpace their actual physical tolerance.
Here's where it gets really interesting. So you're telling me you can't even trust the dog to self-regulate. Their own joy is basically a trap.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have a breed that was designed, genetically, over centuries, to be a companion. Their entire purpose is to interact with humans.
So their desire to please you and engage with you is boundless.
But their airway is strictly abounded, so yes, their joy becomes a liability because their brain is telling them, keep playing with my favorite person, while their body is silently going into oxygen deprivation.
Oh, that is tragic.
They will literally play themselves into a state of respiratory distress because the enthusiasm overrides the physical warning signs. Enthusiasm is not a reliable stopping signal.
Wow. So the owner has to be the one to pull the plug on the fun.
Precisely. Owners must act as the dog's external braking system. You have to implement mandated pauses.
So like during a game of fetch or tug in the living room, You have to force brief timeouts before the excitement escalates too far.
Yes, stop the game, make them sit, let their breathing regulate, and post-play, you can't just toss them in a hot car or a chaotic sunny backyard. They need unhurried downtime in a cool space with water to properly return their heart rate and breathing to baseline.
And we really need to emphasize the cool space part of that, because heat management is practically a full-time job with these dogs, isn't it?
It really is, and we need to understand exactly why. Dogs don't sweat like we do. They cool themselves through panting.
Which works through evaporative cooling, right? They pass air rapidly over the moist membranes of their tongue and the inside of their long snouts.
Right, the evaporation pulls heat away from the blood. But a Frenchie has a smushed face. They literally lack the surface area inside their snout to create enough evaporative cooling.
So because of that terrible cooling efficiency, they cannot pant effectively enough to release body heat.
Which means heat and humidity turn what would be a totally normal, healthy level of activity into a high-risk, potentially life-threatening situation in a matter of minutes.
The clinical notes list some pretty terrifying warning signs that I think everyone needs to memorize if they're ever around this breed. It's not just, oh, he's panting.
No, not at all.
You need to watch for heavy, labored breathing that does not ease up when you force a pause. You're looking for excessive drooling, which means their body is frantically trying to produce moisture to cool down.
You also need to watch for a change in their gum color. If they turn pale, blue, or excessively dark red, and disorientation, like if they seem dizzy, wobbly, or unstable on their feet.
And the medical directive on that is unambiguous,
Yes.
right? If you see any of those signs, you stop the activity immediately.
Immediately, you get the dog into a cool, air-conditioned environment. You apply cool, not freezing cold, but cool water to their paws and belly, and you call a veterinarian.
Especially if those symptoms don't resolve quickly. It is an absolute medical emergency.
Heat stroke in brachycephalic dogs progresses incredibly fast.
So how do you actually navigate this practically day to day? Because honestly, it sounds terrifying. You just lock them indoors from June to September.
No, because then we fall back into the trap of them gaining weight and crushing the airway. It requires finding a practical middle ground and leaning heavily into seasonal flexibility.
So in the summer, your routine has to shift completely.
Right. You rely on early morning or late evening walks when the sun is down. You choose shaded routes, and you transition a lot of your high-energy play indoors to that air-conditioned mental enrichment we talked about.
The scent games and puzzle feeders.
Exactly. In the winter, you have more flexibility outdoors because overheating is less of a risk. But you have to remember their short coat lacks insulation, so they get cold easily.
So the point is that you cannot let fear push you to the extreme of stopping all exercise just because you hear some audible breathing.
Right. Some grunting or snuffling is totally normal for their anatomy.
It's a delicate balancing act. You have to keep them lean so they can breathe, but you have to be hypervigilant while they exercise so they don't overheat.
But you can't be so vigilant that you turn them into a couch potato because then they gain weight and the cocktail straw gets crushed.
Exactly. It's a continuous active management process. You are learning the baseline sounds and behaviors of your specific dog so you can instantly recognize the difference between normal effort and genuine, dangerous struggling.
You really have to become an expert on your own dog.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at the structural reality of the airway, that collapsing cocktail straw.
We've established the absolute life or death necessity of keeping them lean to prevent the airway from being crushed.
We've talked about this shift to short and frequent walks, building their muscular suspension system, tiring out their brain with scent work, and the very real dangers of their own enthusiasm and their inability to cool down.
Yes, it's a lot to manage.
It is. So if you had to distill all of these warnings, all these anatomical quirks we've explored today into one final synthesis for everyone listening, what is the ultimate takeaway?
The core takeaway is this. Exercise for a French Bulldog isn't about doing less. It's about doing it differently. It requires a deeply engaged owner.
So if you combine frequent, short, highly engaged physical activity with robust mental stimulation, strict heat management, and a lean body weight,
You can create a genuinely fit, comfortable, and happy dog that completely defies the couch potato stereotype.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about the myth of the living throw pillow. The idea that these dogs are meant to just sit on our couches completely inactive and unbothered.
Right.
But looking at the reality of their anatomy, I want to leave you with a lingering thought. We, as human beings, have engineered a dog breed whose own heart, whose own boundless joy and enthusiasm for play vastly outpaces its physical ability to actually survive that joy.
It's heavy to think about.
It really is. We designed a dog that will literally play itself to death just to make us happy. What does that mean for our moral responsibility? If we selectively bred the physical capacity for self-control and endurance completely out of their anatomy, aren't we permanently obligated to be the ones who step in and say enough for them?
We definitely are.
Next time you look at that cute snoring potato on your couch, remember, they aren't a throw pillow. They're a compact sports car, and you are the only brakes they have. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Look at the dogs in your life with a new perspective, and we'll catch you next time.